Who is Liz Pindar? The answer for most people is I don't know. And then for other people, it's going to be I don't know. And then for a few people, it's going to be okay, I'll listen because I'm interested in anything to do with Queen Elizabeth because that's who Liz Pindar is. Liz Pindar is Queen Elizabeth. Was she Queen Elizabeth? Yes. Is she Queen Elizabeth of. No. But she's just called Queen Elizabeth to us. Is she? Then I don't know. I don't know. No one's going to say yes or no. Somehow, some way, someone's going to say, yeah, she is one and the same thing. At some particular juncture, when you go, like, remember in math class when you learned how to cancel? If you had an enormous number of things, algebra or whatever, expressions on one side, and then you got an equals and some other weird thing, but you could break it down and then you could cancel this and this one and this one cancels with this one, and then it became much simpler to do the math. Do you remember that? Well, when you're, doing wizardry, because I am, when you're doing wizardry, because in 3D you can get lost in so many different glamours. Glamours are magical hiding things, cloaking and camouflage, and sleight of hand, and holographic projections. Goodness gracious. But in the end, Liz Pindar is Queen Elizabeth, who sits on the throne in London, England. Is Queen Elizabeth the Queen of planet Earth, or is she Queen Elizabeth of more than planet Earth? The answer seems to be she is the Queen of more than planet Earth. How many other planets, how many other realms does she rule? The answer seems to be the once and future Queen. It seems to me Queen Elizabeth I is the once and future Queen. Is Queen Elizabeth I the same as Queen Elizabeth II? If you do all your math canceling, well, let's see. Elizabeth II claims to be defender of the faith, and she claims that she is queen by grace of God. Now, when I say I am God, I'm going to say, she's not my queen. My I am says no, she's not. And my I am says the once and future queen is nothing, it doesn't have anybody there, but it's definitely not Queen Elizabeth the first or the second. How about King Arthur as the once and future king? He says no, not even, no. He says there's been other kings. There was, anyways, he says over and over again, there is no once and future. In other words, what about once and future God? He says, I don't even know if that's true, because my I am says, I don't know. I don't want to go into all these other things. In other stories, we're talking about, I don't know if you can see these names here, but we're looking at Francois Fenelon, who was a French religious title, Francois Fenelon. He might have been like an archbishop in France, or he might have been an abbot. Why do we remember him? Because he was always being referred to by the most interesting man, Vernon Howard. Now, Vernon Howard was an American. Vernon Howard could have been a Canadian from Shibandouan Lake in close to Atikokan, and you're not going to find Atikokan. Close to Thunder Bay, it's the nearest major city. Anyways, there's a Lake Shibandouan there, and Francois Fenelon has got a camp there in 19. Between 1967 and 1975. And if you went to Vernon Howard's camp, well, he would get a group of you together, and maybe earlier you had been swimming or whatever, and you'd run around quite a bit, and you got all the running around out of you, so you could sit still for a good long time because you got the full day's energy expended. And what did Francois Fenelon want to do with you? Through Vernon Howard, he wanted to correct your intellect, because he was the original deprogrammer of people who were brainwashed by cults. And Francois Fenelon would have said the cult is the government, because the government was run by the king, and the king's people were not of the church. They were of the king, and the king, even though he was king by right of being king by God, he still wasn't a godly man, because he wasn't a religious man, he was the king. And that's why they had to have all of the religious people to keep tabs on the king, who they knew wasn't going to anyways, and that's how they justified their enormous staff and their enormous luxury, because they were important people, because they watched the king. Anyways, Abbot Francois Fenelon, through Vernon Howard, would talk to people for a long time and give them a talk, and then hear what people said to see if they got what he was putting it out. And quite often they didn't, but he would talk it through with them, and then he'd say, come back again. And usually the people did come back, even though they were quite often made fools of. It was just that later on, after they'd been made a fool of, they saw the error of the ways they were using before they met Vernon Howard, because in the end no one ever bested Vernon Howard, because Vernon Howard was Francois Fenelon, the abbot and the archbishop, and he'd had many lifetimes being someone who was exceptionally intelligent, who understood the ways of the king, and who understood the ways of the church, and who understood the ways of the common people, and the soldiers, and the farmers, and perhaps even the apothecaries and the surgeons, and perhaps even the sailors and the captains, because being a religious person, at some particular point, the abbot, I'm sure, stood in for the father in the confessional and listened to many people confess all about their lives. So that's why we say Francois Fenelon, also known as Vernon Howard, is someone you should look into. Yes, because you can get his books in used books place, and they're still very good. Now, this other person, the first person was Francois Fenelon, who was related to Vernon Howard. The next person is independent of those two people, and his name is Ferrar Fenton, and he has something to do with the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary given to us by Charles Fillmore. So, if you want to know more about Ferrar Fenton, you're going to need to look him up. And if you can't find anything about him, then look up Charles Fillmore, and I'm sure you'll find Metaphysical Bible Dictionary there. And don't forget that that is free and online. So if you don't want to buy Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, go look things up. Should you? Yes, you should. If you have a biblical name, go look up your name. And if you don't, then President Biden has a biblical name. Go look up the name Joseph in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary online, and now you can make it so, number one.